begin this morning in Washington, where President Biden's legislative agenda faces some major tests in Congress this week. Today, the House will debate the bipartisan $1 trillion infrastructure bill. Speaker Nancy Pelosi had originally said lawmakers would vote on the measure by today, but she now says that vote will be delayed until later this week. Democrats are also aiming to take action on a $3.5 trillion spending package to expand social programs. Plus, lawmakers are considering legislation to prevent a government shutdown and avoid a debt default. Laura Podesta reports.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced last night that a vote will be held Thursday on the $1 trillion bipartisan crafted infrastructure bill. Debate on the legislation begins today. Speaker Pelosi seems confident the measure will pass.
I'm never bringing a bill to the floor that doesn't have the votes.
The bill was supposed to be voted on today, but was postponed as some Democrats are still holding out. At issue is whether moderate Democrats can find a compromise that will appease progressives who want to link the vote on the infrastructure bill to a more expensive $3.5 trillion spending package related to climate change and health care. California Democrat Scott Peters voted against that larger bill during a rare budget committee session Saturday.
I'm concerned, however, this process is being rushed, which has not allowed for the debate and discussion this consequential bill deserves.
Nevertheless, Speaker Pelosi and many Democrats feel they need to push forward.
I see us in a position where failure is not an option. It is not an option.
It's a delicate negotiation, one the White House is following closely.
I'm optimistic about this week. It's going to take the better part of the week, I think.
Further complicating matters, a fight over raising the debt ceiling looms just around the corner. If lawmakers don't vote to increase the nation's debt limit by Friday, the United States will default on its financial obligations and risk sending global markets into turmoil. Laura Podesta, CBS News.
So for more analysis on this crucial week, Kris Van Cleave is here to discuss with us. So Kris, we've been making a big deal out of just how important this is for President Biden, but can you explain how crucial this week is for his agenda?
Well, it's basically his entire domestic agenda, and it would send a message to the rest of the world if the president can't have his domestic agenda. Is America really back? So it is probably the biggest week, the biggest series of legislative tests for this administration. Now, granted, they've been in office for 8 months, so it's their biggest test to date, but it could be a defining moment for his presidency. It certainly could be a defining moment for Democrats' hopes of keeping the House and the Senate in 2022. So it's a big week.
So let's talk about this infrastructure bill. What are you hearing? Have you spoken to lawmakers? Are they confident that the infrastructure bill, the $1 trillion one, will pass when the vote comes up later on this week?
Candidly, if Democrats were confident it would pass, they'd probably be voting on it today. The fact that we're seeing a vote on Thursday and several days of procedural stuff tells you that the Speaker doesn't have the votes right this minute. As she said, she doesn't bring a bill to the floor that she can't pass. So if she could pass it today, I suspect she would. She had promised to bring it up for consideration by today. They will start considering it today. There will be debate and formalities spread out until Thursday, when the Speaker is hoping that she's gotten a deal together that appeases the moderates and the progressives enough so that even though some progressives aren't going to vote for this, that there'll be enough support to get across the finish line.
And then what about the bigger bill? What's the status of the $3.5 trillion spending package? Do they have all the Democrats on board?
No, they don't. And frankly, the framework of that is still being worked out, and that's what the Speaker is essentially buying some time for this week, because progressives won't support the infrastructure bill, they say, unless they know that the reconciliation bill is going to pass, or at least has a fighting chance. And we also know, and the Speaker acknowledged this in her interview over the weekend, that you have Democrats in the Senate who don't want a $3.5 trillion bill, so it's not going to be $3.5 $2.5 trillion. We just don't know how much it's going to be, and we don't know what's in it yet. You know, the Speaker and Majority Leader Senator Schumer talked about a framework, a deal for around a framework. Of course, we don't really understand or know what that framework is. So until there are some more particulars, it's hard to tell you what's in or what's out in that bill. But the talks are ongoing. The Speaker is hoping to, at the very least, have sort of foundational agreement on that bill as it moves forward. Although you saw in the Budget Committee there a moderate Democrat vote against it. And Representative Peters' point was, at least in part, he doesn't want to be voting on things that can't pass the Senate. So until there is a compromise between the House and the Senate on what exactly they're going to move forward with, that remains a big question mark.
So just, bring this this funding bill just into more focus, because as I understood it, initially there was sort of a commitment to spend this amount of money, and then they were going to sort of hammer out how the money was going to be spent. But are there still sort of few specifics about where all this money is going to go, and is that the primary issue for some of the more moderate Democrats? So
the reconciliation, the first step of this was to set a framework of what they could spend. It puts a ceiling of $3.5 trillion. Now, typically, I know certainly in my own budget, if I say I'm going to spend X, I seem to spend at least that. So what you're doing is you're setting the maximum they can spend. It wasn't a guarantee that it would be $3.5 trillion, but certainly it was what progressive Democrats, Senator Bernie Sanders, who was leading the Budget Committee in the Senate, wanted to spend. In fact, he had hoped to spend more than that. Now you're getting into the nitty-gritty of what people will support, what they'll vote for, how much they're willing to spend, and that number, is not the same for each person. So that's what they're working through. If Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema come back and say that they're okay at $2.5 trillion, well, you're probably going to end up with a package that's closer to $2.5 trillion, because that can get the 50 votes you need in the Senate, and then you'll just have to adjust the spending inside that bill based on what the dollar figure is. It's a little bit of it's going to be more give and take, more negotiating inside the Democratic caucus in the Senate to get to a number that's going to work. And then you have to hope, if you're Speaker Pelosi, that the progressives in your caucus in the House don't balk at whatever the Senate says they'll pass. So there are a lot of pitfalls here for something that everybody says failure is not an option, and the path ahead is going to have some hurdles still. And we haven't even gotten to the debt ceiling and funding the government, which is two more things that have to get done here in pretty short order.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about before I had to let you go. Raising the debt ceiling, where do things stand with that? It's pretty imminent.
So there's a little bit more wiggle room on the debt ceiling than there is funding the government. The government will run out of money this week. By September 30th, that's in their fiscal year. And if there's not some kind of a continuing resolution to continue to fund the government operations, you're going to see another government shutdown. The debt ceiling, Congress has to act by probably mid-October to raise that, or you risk the U.S. defaulting on its debt. That would be potentially catastrophic to not only the U.S. economy, but the global economy, to people's 401ks, to the stock market. So we talk about a fiscal cliff, that's it. And you don't really want to go over that if you can avoid it. But there's a little bit of time before the debt ceiling becomes a complete, the only thing that anyone can focus on up here. That said, the Senate will vote tonight on a measure to fund the government into December and to raise the debt ceiling. That won't get the 60 votes it needs. It's unclear what Democrats are going to do next, but they're going to have to fund the government, and they're going to have to raise the debt ceiling. Republicans have said they will not support raising the debt ceiling.
All right, lots going on. Keep you busy, Kris. Thank you very much.
Sure thing.